I'm previewing the 2025 West Virginia Mountaineers football team in 10 minutes. In just a second, welcome to another college football podcast. If you like talking college football, no matter when, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel. It is free. I do appreciate it, and I hope you'll pass it along to your friends, your neighbors, and whoever loves West Virginia football or college football. So this year, the big news is that Rich Rodriguez, yes, the prodigal, my son has returned. If you remember that Office quote where Michael messes it up, you maybe are laughing, but if you're a West Virginia fan, you may not be laughing whatsoever. Rich Rodriguez played for West Virginia in the early 80s. Later on, he became a highly sought-after offensive coordinator, having stops at Tulane where they went undefeated. He was an offensive coordinator for Tommy Bowden there. Then he was offensive coordinator for Tommy Bowden in the early years at Clemson. A lot of people in Clemson believes that had Rich Rod stuck around, Bowden would have been a lot more successful. We'll never know because he ended up taking the head coach job at West Virginia. He did a pretty doggone good job. Of course, the first season was rough, but we remember that Pat White, Steve Slayton team. We remember 11 wins back to back, but we also remember what happened there. Rich Rodriguez leaves for another blue and yellow team. It's Michigan, and everyone in West Virginia probably still hasn't forgiven him for it. In fact, I talked to someone this week who they have a lot of family there. In fact, they used to live in West Virginia, and they said point blank, we're not so thrilled about this. We remember what he did. It was a whole lawsuit and crazy mess that went on. You fast forward almost 20 years, and he's back. I mean, he had that, well, I say stop. He was in Michigan. It was awful. It went terrible. Then he went to Arizona. Didn't do too bad there. He ended up leaving there. He had a few miscellaneous stops. Last, he was at Jacksonville State and did a pretty good job there. Now he's back home. Now, when we look at this football team, we know they're in the Big 12, this former Big East team. When I think of West Virginia, I still can't get the Big East out of my mind. You know, with teams like Virginia Tech and Miami, Boston College, Pittsburgh, but that's long gone. Totally different. It's a totally different time. But let's talk about who he brings in. Let's start with his coaching staff. Now, he brought in Zach Alley. Zach Alley spent 1 year at Oklahoma as the defensive coordinator. He previously served under Rich Rodriguez as the defensive coordinator at Jacksonville State. Now, his defensive unit last year at Oklahoma did pretty doggone good, having to coach against the talent of the SEC. This was a really good get for Rich Rodriguez to bring him into West Virginia and to have to coach a team that they're basically rebuilding. Now, we know that on the offensive side of the football, Rich Rod is going to be calling his own plays. He may have someone called an offensive coordinator they throw in there and this, that, and the other, but Rich Rod is in control of his offense. Let's move to the players. Now, I was reading, and I was diving into this a little earlier, that basically the only two players that they see them as returning starters is Jaheim White and Rodney Gallagher. Now, Jaheim White had a really solid season last year, over 800 yards on the ground. Rodney Gallagher, he went in and he did his things. He did his thing, but at the end of the day, they are really the only two returning starters. Now, I'm going to dive into their transfer portal before I dive into the rest of their team, but you need to realize this team brought in over 20 transfer players. So let's talk about some of those players. We're going to zip through this really quick. At quarterback, they brought in Jalen Henderson and Max Brown. I know they have a guy there. We'll talk about him in just a second. That's already at West Virginia. Played some last year. Brought in Ty Edwards and LJ Turner at the running back position. Also, don't forget that they brought in Knighton from SMU. Jalen Knighton. This guy started out at Miami. I want to say he either had some injuries or just followed Rhett Lashley over. He was at SMU. The guy is a really talented football player, but he does have some injury issues. He joined the team in late April. This is a really big get as well for Rich Rodriguez. Now, if we're trying to figure out what you're going to do on offense, we know that Rich Rod is going to use the players that he's pulled in, like Gerard Bowie, Cam Vaughn, Oren Singleton, Jacob Barrick at tight end. He brought in 6 offensive linemen. There's a lot of them. On the defensive side of the ball, he brought in Jamori Robinson, already a preseason All Big 12 member, according to one other site that I saw. So Jamori Robinson, that's a solid get. Fred Perry, Derek Carter, and many more at defensive back. Ashton Woods and Chase Wilson at linebacker. And a defensive lineman, I'm not even going to take a shot at his name, Chemo, and I'm going to leave it there. I want to say he's out of Alabama, I believe. I could be wrong. But that's what he brings to the table. That's what he's bringing to this team. He realized that, yes, we have just a few returning starters here and there. And maybe it's only a few returning starters also that he trusts. Now, I admit that I was going to look this up before I started this video, and it would just went. But they do have a returning quarterback. And this guy split time with Garrett Green last year when Garrett Green got hurt. Garrett Green threw for over 2,300 yards, but they brought in, they have Nico Marchiol. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. Forgive me, West Virginia fans, if I butchered that. As I said, I was going to look it up. I didn't. He took some snaps last year in place of Garrett Green. He threw for about 434 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 touchdowns. So they have options at quarterback. But overall, this team is completely and totally rebuilt from the ground up. So I want to take a look at their schedule really quick. I said I want to preview this team in about 10 minutes. And so as I'm sharing the screen here and you're going to see their schedule, I want you to understand something. This year may be critical on the side of West Virginia fans wanting their team to be incredible, but I think this is a really good rebuild year, and I think that it's a really good there's some really good pieces on the table between coaching and the players they brought in. First, they start off with Robert Morris. I see that very winnable. Ohio, that is a winnable ball game for this team. We get to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's an okay ACC team, more to bottom to mid-tier, but they do have some talent there. It will be in West Virginia. You have Kansas. Kansas does this. They go up and down. And then they play one of the leading teams in all of the Big 12, Utah. There's a lot of big expectations for Utah, so that's most likely a loss. You look at BYU, a team who had an incredible season, but the whole quarterback issue, and they were not returning a lot of starters right off the top of my head. I know LJ Martin, I'm pretty sure he's back. So that could definitely be a loss. UCF, a team that has a new head coach in Scott Frost. He's rewinding it. It's funny that 2 rewind coaches are playing one another here. That's definitely a winnable game for them. You go in and you play TCU, a winnable game, but it will be tough. Houston, this would be a tough one, but winnable. Colorado, who really knows with them. No Travis Hunter. A potentially winnable game in Morgantown. You have Arizona State coming to town, who is a top team in the Big 12. This game's most likely a loss. And then you have Texas Tech, who spent more money than most of us ever thought about having on just this roster this year. And once again, in Morgantown, West Virginia. So as I'm looking over this schedule, just quickly, I see a loss here. I see a loss here and a potential loss here. All right. And then there's a bunch of toss-up games. So what am I going to say about this season? When I look at this team, I see them legitimately being a 500 team. There's no reason why they can't beat Robert Morris or they can't beat Ohio and some of the lower tier teams. And maybe if the talent that they've brought in, plus the coaching that they have, meshes, you may see 8 wins out of this team and probably 4 losses. Those losses coming against like Utah, as I said. Maybe BYU is a little tougher than what everyone thinks, and everyone's focusing on Retzloff no longer being there. Texas Tech, maybe they get them. Maybe their transfer portal players don't gel as much as everyone wants. You spend the money, but can you actually get the team to play together? We won't know, but I think that this will be a nice rebuilding year for West Virginia. And one of the easiest ways to make people forgive you and get past the past is just simply to win. And that's what I think Rich Rodriguez would do in the long run. Folks, let me know in the comments section. What do you think is going to happen in Morgantown, West Virginia? Will Rich Rod win and all be forgiven? Or will everyone hold it over his head? He fails, and then they're like, good riddance. Who knows? Let me know in the comments section. Hope you'll subscribe. It is free. Take care of yourself, and as always, I'll catch you later watching college football.